I'm not even sure where to start. This feels like one of those stories you read late at night and think, no way that actually happened. But it did. And I'm sitting here, half-drained bottle of wine beside me, cat asleep on the counter, my wife humming in the other room, trying to make sense of what the hell my life has become. My name's Daniel. I'm 36. Been married to Leah, 33F, for 4 years. No kids. She said she wasn't ready, and honestly, neither was I. Our relationship has always looked great from the outside. She's beautiful, sharp, charming in public in that effortless way that makes people remember her. I'm quieter, more the behind-the-scenes type, civil engineer, spreadsheet brain, slow to warm up to people. We met at a conference in Atlanta. She was running PR for some startup. I was half asleep in the corner with blueprints and too much coffee. She made me laugh during the most boring panel I've ever sat through, and we ended up at a rooftop bar 2 hours later. 3 months after that, we moved in together. A year after that, we got married. The beginning was good. Really good. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. But the last few months, something changed. Her smile changed first. It's weird to describe. But there was this way she used to smile at me, like I was the only one who existed in the room. I hadn't seen that version of her in a long time. Lately, her smiles were shorter. Flickered too fast. Landed too easily on her phone. She started hiding her messages, or more precisely, forgetting to hide them. She used to leave her phone on the table while we had dinner. Now it's either face down or glued to her hand. One time she got a text from someone named E that made her giggle. She swiped it away so quickly it might as well have been a hallucination. When I asked, she snapped, "It's just Ellie from work, Jesus, don't be so suspicious." Except Ellie has never made her laugh like that. She started working late more often. Started snapping when I asked where she'd been. "Why do you care so much all of a sudden?" she said once, slamming her bag down. "You're the one who's always buried in work." I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was stress. That maybe I had been distant, and she was pulling away because I'd been too busy, too distracted. I even lit candles the other night, made her favorite pasta, poured her a glass of wine before she got home, trying to reconnect. She smiled at me across the table that night. But it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was the same smile I'd seen her give strangers. Polished. Practiced. And then, this is where it starts getting weird, it rained a few nights ago. I remember that because it's the first night I didn't follow her. Instead, I got a message. It was from a burner account, no profile pic, generic username, barely any history. But the message was short, direct, and it hit like a punch to the gut. "She will ruin your life, just like she ruined mine. I'm her first husband." I blinked at the screen for a long time. At first, I thought it was a troll. A scam. A sick joke. I mean, Leah never told me she was married before. She said she almost got married once in her 20s, but it fell apart early, and that was it. I didn't push. Hell, we all have chapters we don't reread. But this? This wasn't almost married. I replied. "Who are you? What are you talking about?" The account went silent. Just vanished. Deleted within 30 minutes. No answer. No follow-up. I stared at her that night while she slept. Peacefully. As if nothing in the world was wrong. I told myself to forget it. Probably a mistake. A bitter ex or an internet psycho. But the thing is, once you read something like that, you can't forget it. It plants something. A seed of doubt. A flicker that starts to burn. And once it starts burning, you begin to see things. Small things. Big things. Things that make you question every smile, every touch, every night she comes home just a little too late with hair too perfect and stories too vague. That message cracked something open in me. And I don't think I'm ready for what's about to crawl out. After that strange message, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled into something far more complex than I understood. I tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, but once your mind opens to the possibility that someone is lying to you, especially someone you share a bed with, it changes how you see everything. Leah's behavior didn't help. She became even more defensive, touchier than usual, always ready to turn small questions into arguments. If I asked why she was late, she'd accuse me of being controlling. If I made a light comment about someone she mentioned in passing, she'd call me insecure. Conversations became landmines, and I started tiptoeing around the woman I used to feel safest with. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. That message could have come from anyone, a prank, some random troll, maybe even someone who had the wrong person. But there were things I started to notice that I couldn't explain away. One night, I caught her whispering on the phone in the guest bathroom, the one with no windows and a door that doesn't creak. When I asked who she was talking to, she shrugged it off like it was nothing, like I was being weird for even asking. But I knew the look in her eyes. It was that fleeting panic people get when they've been caught doing something they shouldn't. The next day, I looked through some of her old things, boxes in the attic I hadn't touched since we moved in together. I wasn't even searching for dirt, just trying to piece something together. I found photo albums, journals, mementos from years before I met her. Nothing strange at first, until I realized there were no photos of her with anyone romantically involved. Not a single one. Just friends, travel shots, and selfies. It felt curated, like a timeline scrubbed clean. That would have been enough to give me pause. But then the email came. Not a message this time, an actual email to my personal inbox. It came with a blurry photo attached. The image was old, low resolution, but I recognized Leah instantly. She looked younger, maybe early 20s. She was wearing a white dress and standing next to a man I didn't recognize, holding what looked like wedding vows. Both of them had rings on. It wasn't a posed photo. It looked candid, almost like it had been taken in secret. The body of the email was brief and vague. It didn't explain much, but it made one thing painfully clear: Leah had been married before. And that part of her life had been hidden from me. I confronted her, of course, gently at first. I brought up the topic of past relationships. She brushed it off, said she didn't believe in dragging baggage into new relationships. When I pressed further, she got cold. Her whole posture shifted. She accused me of being obsessive, of invading her privacy, of digging into her past because I couldn't handle the present. It didn't make sense. Most people don't hide a previous marriage unless there's something about it they don't want discovered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation we'd ever had about her past, realizing how skillfully she had steered them away. She never mentioned family, barely spoke about friends from before her late 20s, and the few people I had met from her old life all felt distant. Like placeholders. A part of me wanted to believe I was overreacting. That maybe the photo was staged, or a youthful mistake she didn't feel the need to revisit. But another part, the part that had been ignited by the message I received, was convinced this was just the beginning. I decided to dig deeper. Carefully. Quietly. I wasn't going to accuse her without proof. I just needed to know what I was dealing with. What I didn't expect was how quickly things would escalate. Because the next time I checked that email, it was gone. Not just the message, the entire thread. Vanished. Like it had never been sent. And when I tried to reply to the sender, the address no longer existed. That's when the unease turned into something else. A quiet dread I couldn't name yet, but I knew it was coming. I didn't sleep much after the email vanished. At first, I thought I'd just imagined the whole thing. Maybe I had accidentally deleted it, maybe it had gone to spam and auto-cleared. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I remembered the wording. I remembered the tone. I remembered the photo, the way Leah was smiling in it, not for the camera, but for the man beside her. That image was etched in my memory. I spent the next day trying to trace the email. I checked the inbox again, the trash, the server logs. Nothing. I ran a recovery tool. Still nothing. It was as if the message had never been sent. But I knew what I saw. I knew it had been there. Later that week, I tried to search for the sender online. Nothing came up. No social media accounts. No public records under the name that had been briefly mentioned in the original username. Just a few old web pages that were archived and broken. It was like chasing a ghost. And then, something even stranger happened. I reached out to a friend of mine who works in digital security. I didn't tell him everything, just said I'd gotten a suspicious message that disappeared, and I wanted to know if there was any way to trace it. He ran some scripts, checked my email logs, and found nothing. But he did ask me one strange question: had I shared access to my inbox with anyone? I hadn't. He said the logs showed that someone using my credentials had logged in from a different location 2 days earlier and deleted a thread manually. Not automatically. Not from my device. That was when the anxiety turned into something else. It wasn't just that someone had messaged me. Someone had gone back and erased it, and used my login to do it. I confronted Leah, not directly, but subtly. I asked if she'd used my laptop. She said no, with that irritated tone she used when she thought I was being too technical or weird. I told her my email had been accessed. She shrugged and said it was probably some scam or Russian hacker. Nothing serious. I let it go. But I knew she had used my laptop the previous weekend. She'd borrowed it while hers was acting up. I remembered because she made a big deal out of asking for the charger. A few days later, the final confirmation came. I tried calling the number that had briefly appeared in the signature of that first email, just once. The line rang. Then disconnected. After that, every time I called, it went straight to a deactivated message. So I went deeper. I searched public marriage records for Leah's name. I had to dig through several counties, some of which didn't have proper digital archives. It took hours. But finally, I found it. She had been married before. The date matched her almost married timeline, but it wasn't almost. It was real. Marriage certificate, court record. I stared at the document on my screen for a long time, feeling equal parts vindicated and hollow. She'd lied to me. Completely. I tried to find out more about the man. There wasn't much. Just a few scattered mentions in old online directories. An outdated Facebook page that hadn't been touched in years. A Reddit account with 4 posts from over a decade ago. But nothing recent. No photos, no activity. It was like he'd vanished. And then, I made one last attempt to reach him. I sent a direct message to the Reddit account. The next day, it was gone. Deleted. Every trace of him was disappearing, one piece at a time. I didn't know what was more unsettling, the fact that he warned me, or the possibility that someone was making sure he could never warn anyone again. And when I brought it up to Leah, just a general comment about old marriages, she looked at me with the calmest face in the world and said something that still gives me chills. She said there was no one before me. That I was her first. That she didn't know what I was talking about. Not defensive. Not flustered. Just smooth. Blank. Like she had rehearsed it 1,000 times. After Leah denied everything, things got strange, fast. She started acting like I was the problem. If I brought up the gaps in her past, she'd act confused or mock me. If I asked about the deleted email or the old marriage records, she'd laugh, say I was losing it. Calm, collected, emotionless. She never raised her voice, just flipped the conversation, always making me doubt my own memory. When I mentioned the man who contacted me, she looked me straight in the eye and told me I must have dreamt it. That maybe I needed to talk to someone. That was her new favorite line, "You should get help." She started locking her phone. Changed passwords on our shared streaming accounts. My laptop started running slower, like someone had installed something on it. I scanned for malware, nothing showed up. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching what I searched. Even weirder, her behavior in public didn't change at all. She was warm, charming, affectionate. But behind closed doors, she was cold, distant, and eerily in control. Then came the real mind twist. I went to her purse one evening, not snooping, just looking for the keys she usually leaves inside. At the bottom, I found an old photo tucked into a slim wallet pocket. Her. Younger. Same dress from the mysterious wedding photo. Same man. I left it on the coffee table, said nothing. The next day. Gone. I asked her about it. She didn't flinch. There was no photo. She even told me I might be developing paranoia. That stress makes people imagine things. I started to believe her. That's what scared me most. Everything began to feel off. Not just Leah, everything. My house, my memory, my sense of what was real and what wasn't. I was still trying to convince myself this was all just an overreaction. That maybe I was losing my grip. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. It was Leah's eyes. Not the usual avoidance or defensiveness you'd expect from someone hiding a secret, hers held nothing. Just calm, eerie stillness, like she already knew how the conversation would end. I started keeping track of things. Conversations. Glances. Password changes. Phone calls cut short. She always had an explanation, logical, smooth, practiced. Too practiced. One night I woke up and found her gone from bed. Not in the bathroom, not downstairs. Just gone. The garage was locked, the car still there. I waited by the window, heart racing. When she finally walked in from the backyard, at 2:13 a.m., she was barefoot, holding her phone. She acted like it was normal. Said she couldn't sleep and wanted fresh air. In 30-degree rain. That wasn't the first time. A week later, she went out for a walk after midnight. No coat, no keys. I stayed quiet and watched through the upstairs blinds. She walked 2 blocks, stopped at the same corner, then just stood there. Not pacing. Not talking. Just, waiting. After 10 minutes, she turned around and came back. When I asked what she was doing, she looked blank and said, "What walk?" She genuinely acted like I'd made the whole thing up. It started happening more often. Subtle gaslighting. I'd mention things, conversations we had, items that went missing, and she'd deny all of it. Even small things. She'd leave a glass on the stair, I'd move it, and she'd claim it was never there to begin with. At one point, I started taking pictures with my phone, evidence that I wasn't going crazy. One photo, in particular, I took of a red file folder on her desk, half open, with documents showing her name beside someone else's. I don't know what it was for, but it didn't match her job. When I checked again the next morning, the folder was gone. I checked the photos. They had been deleted. From both my phone and the cloud backup. I hadn't touched the trash bin. She had my passcode. Then came the breaking point. I took a day off work. I told her I had a site inspection, but I stayed home. She left around 8 a.m., as usual. I waited 30 minutes, then checked the home camera feed. She hadn't driven to work. She hadn't driven anywhere. She met someone 2 blocks away. A man. Tall, dark coat, cap pulled low. They didn't touch, but they walked side by side, familiar, close. I saved the footage. Backed it up offline. That night, I didn't confront her. I wanted to wait. I wanted to be sure. But she beat me to it. She sat me down like I was the one in trouble. Calm, cold tone. Said she was worried about me. That I was acting paranoid. That I'd been confused lately. She said she found journals I'd apparently written, pages of erratic, obsessive thoughts about her. I had never seen these journals. She claimed she found them in the guest room drawer. She handed me one. My handwriting. My name. Pages of disturbing text. But none of it felt like mine. Words I don't use. Sentences that didn't match how I think. It felt planted. Forged. And the worst part? I couldn't prove otherwise. I asked her if she'd been in touch with anyone from her past. She stared at me for a moment, then smiled, not warm, but polite. She said she'd never been married before. I mentioned that I'd seen the marriage records. She laughed, said those sites are full of errors. Public records are garbage, Daniel. You know that. When I brought up the email, the one that vanished, she tilted her head and simply asked, "What email?" My voice cracked. I told her about the messages, the photo, the man in the corner, the midnight walks. She looked at me like I'd described a dream. That's when she said it. You should talk to someone. Those 5 words carried more weight than any insult she'd ever thrown. It wasn't an attack. It was a sentence carefully chosen to make me question my own sanity. The next day, she set up an appointment, with a therapist she found for me. She handed me the card like a concerned partner. Said she already spoke to them. That they were briefed. I never went. Instead, I started sleeping in the guest room. I began carrying a USB key with offline backups. I changed my phone PIN. I installed a discreet home camera in the hallway. I needed to know what I was up against. Because this wasn't just infidelity. This was a game of reality. And I was losing. I didn't sleep for more than 2 hours a night after Leah handed me that therapist's card. Something in me had shifted. My world felt warped, like the walls of the house were pressing in, and every room held a version of the truth I wasn't allowed to see. But I wasn't imagining things. I knew I wasn't. The message. The photo. The man in the rain. The deleted files. The walks. The timing. The smile that never quite reached her eyes anymore. It was all real. I became methodical. Not obsessed, methodical. While Leah slept, I began combing through our shared devices. We had a network drive from years ago where we used to back up our files. I hadn't accessed it in ages, but it was still connected to the router. Buried under layers of folders, family photos, scanned documents, old resumes, I found a directory titled with her initials and a year from before we met. Inside were PDFs, dozens of them. Travel confirmations, scanned contracts, name change requests. But not with Leah's name. A different name entirely, first and last, one I didn't recognize. Except the birth date matched. So did the signature. I stared at the screen for a long time before I started clicking through them. Marriage license. Divorce petition. A joint lease for a condo in Phoenix. Credit reports. A restraining order application. A letter from a therapist with notes on emotional instability and gaslighting tendencies in the relationship. All of it, from 10 years ago. That's when I realized, she didn't just erase the man from her life. She tried to erase herself. The next file was a driver's license. Same face. Same eyes. Different name. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed more. I needed someone who knew this version of her. So I did something desperate. I went back to the old Facebook account I'd found weeks earlier, the one I suspected belonged to the man who warned me. It had been wiped clean, but one tagged photo remained, buried in someone else's album from 2013. It was him. Older now. But definitely the same man from the wedding photo and the one she met near the cafe. I clicked through the comments. One stood out. A name I hadn't seen before, a woman who had commented something harmless years ago. I searched her profile. She had a public post about an old college friend who passed away suddenly a few years back. The name was his. There it was. An obituary. His name. His age. The date matched, 2 weeks after he sent me that message. The cause of death, accidental fall during a hiking trip. No foul play suspected. I felt my chest cave in. I read it again. Then a third time. It didn't feel right. He had messaged me about Leah days before. He'd vanished after. And now this? I tried calling the woman who'd written the post. There was a number listed on a small fundraising page. I left a voicemail. I never got a call back. Later that night, Leah came home early. Her mood was lighter than usual, almost giddy. She brought dinner. A bottle of wine. Wore one of the dresses she hadn't touched in months. It was unnerving. I tried to act normal. I pretended to enjoy it. But inside, I was bracing. After she went to bed, I checked the hallway camera. She had turned it off again. And that wasn't all. The hard drive I'd pulled the documents from. Gone. She had taken it. Just like the photo. Just like the email. But this time, I had backups. Copies on a separate encrypted drive. Hidden. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want to expose her, yet. I just needed to know, who was I married to? And how far would she go to keep me from finding out? Because now, I was no longer sure this was just about infidelity or lies. This felt like something much worse. And I had a gut feeling, if I pushed too hard, I might end up like the man who warned me. Gone. The next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't heard in days, the doorbell. I hadn't ordered anything. No deliveries, no appointments. When I checked the peephole, there was a man standing there, mid-40s, weathered, professional-looking, holding an envelope. He didn't look like a salesman. I opened the door cautiously. He introduced himself quickly, said he was a private investigator. Said he was looking into a woman by the name Leah once used, the one from the documents I had found. His tone was measured, but his eyes were watchful. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know if this was a trap. A coincidence. Something worse. So I asked why he was here. He said he'd been hired by the family of the man who had died. The man who had once warned me, the one in the old Facebook post, the obituary. His family didn't believe his death was an accident. And they were quietly trying to find out what he'd been doing in the days leading up to it. That's when I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't told anyone about that message. Or the emails. Or the fact that Leah had connections to him. But this PI. He knew enough to find my address. He said my name came up in the man's browser history. Said he tried to contact me, and then disappeared. I asked him to wait. I grabbed the USB with the offline backups. I didn't explain everything, but I gave him a few files, copies of the documents with Leah's old name, the scanned marriage license, the wedding photo. His eyes didn't widen. He just nodded like he'd already suspected all of it. Before he left, he told me one thing that stuck with me, that this woman, under her old name, had left at least 2 other towns behind. Quietly. 1 ex-boyfriend. 1 restraining order. And now, a dead husband. I didn't sleep that night. Leah noticed. She kept trying to act normal, overly affectionate, even playful. Like she sensed I was pulling away, and this was her attempt to reel me back in. But it wasn't working. I couldn't stop replaying what the investigator said. The look on his face. The way he lowered his voice when he said, "Be careful." I had proof now. I wasn't crazy. But the more I uncovered, the clearer it became, this wasn't just a tangled past. It was a pattern. And I was next in line. The next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't heard in days, the doorbell. I hadn't ordered anything. No deliveries, no appointments. When I checked the peephole, there was a man standing there, mid-40s, weathered, professional-looking, holding an envelope. He didn't look like a salesman. I opened the door cautiously. He introduced himself quickly, said he was a private investigator. Said he was looking into a woman by the name Leah once used, the one from the documents I had found. His tone was measured, but his eyes were watchful. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know if this was a trap. A coincidence. Something worse. So I asked why he was here. He said he'd been hired by the family of the man who had died. The man who had once warned me, the one in the old Facebook post, the obituary. His family didn't believe his death was an accident. And they were quietly trying to find out what he'd been doing in the days leading up to it. That's when I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't told anyone about that message. Or the emails. Or the fact that Leah had connections to him. But this PI. He knew enough to find my address. He said my name came up in the man's browser history. Said he tried to contact me, and then disappeared. I asked him to wait. I grabbed the USB with the offline backups. I didn't explain everything, but I gave him a few files, copies of the documents with Leah's old name, the scanned marriage license, the wedding photo. His eyes didn't widen. He just nodded like he'd already suspected all of it. Before he left, he told me one thing that stuck with me, that this woman, under her old name, had left at least 2 other towns behind. Quietly. 1 ex-boyfriend. 1 restraining order. And now, a dead husband. I didn't sleep that night. Leah noticed. She kept trying to act normal, overly affectionate, even playful. Like she sensed I was pulling away, and this was her attempt to reel me back in. But it wasn't working. I couldn't stop replaying what the investigator said. The look on his face. The way he lowered his voice when he said, "Be careful." I had proof now. I wasn't crazy. But the more I uncovered, the clearer it became, this wasn't just a tangled past. It was a pattern. And I was next in line. After discovering the USB wiped clean, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay in the guest room, fully clothed, phone off, adrenaline spiking at every sound. Footsteps. A creaking stair. The subtle click of a cabinet door. All harmless on their own. But in this house, now, they felt like warnings. That smile on the camera haunted me. It wasn't just that she found it. She wanted me to know she found it. It was her move in a game I never agreed to play. The next morning, I went to work like usual. Sat at my desk. Stared at blueprints I couldn't process. Around lunch, I walked to the bank and opened a new checking account. Cash only. Then I rented a small storage unit 3 towns over, under a fake name. I bought a cheap second phone at a gas station on the way back, activated it using public Wi-Fi behind a liquor store. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was survival. I began transferring my files, slowly, carefully. PDFs, documents. Images I had recovered from earlier backups. Notes I'd written. The camera footage. Anything that proved Leah was hiding more than just a messy divorce. Back home, I was careful. I smiled. Kissed her cheek. Told her work was exhausting. She seemed relaxed. Almost pleased. She had won again, or thought she had. That night, I lied and said I was going on a 2-day site visit. She barely acknowledged it. I think she stopped caring about my schedule once she figured she controlled the space we shared. The next day, I left before dawn, but I didn't go to work. I drove straight to the storage unit, locked everything inside, and parked my car at a long-term airport lot under a friend's name. Then I took a bus. Switched cities twice. Booked a room under a prepaid name. I didn't take anything from home, no suitcase, no electronics, nothing traceable. Just essentials. ID, phone. Drive. Backup. I hadn't told anyone. No friends. No family. Not even my boss. Because I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. What if she tried to find me? What if she said I had vanished? Or worse, what if she said she had? I kept checking news sites. No headlines yet. No missing person reports. No mentions of me or her. But I did get one notification. The hallway camera was offline again. Not disabled, physically removed. The feed ended at 3:06 a.m. Frame frozen on Leah walking toward the lens with a hammer in her hand. And that smile again. I've been gone for 23 days. In that time, I've changed cities, names, numbers, routines. I've moved 3 times. I never stay in one place longer than a week. I use cash. No social media. No contact with anyone from my old life, not even my parents. I wrote them a vague letter telling them I needed space. That was it. Because I don't know how close she was to finding out what I knew. Or how close she still might be. There's no evidence. No news articles. No suspicious activity linked to my name. But silence isn't always safety, it's just a pause before something hits. And I can't afford to be surprised again. I keep thinking about the people before me. The ex-husband, the one who warned me. Dead. Officially, a tragic fall on a hike. Unofficially, the only person who tried to pull me out before I sank too deep. And now he's gone. The investigator. Gone, too. Phone cut off. Email dead. Disappeared without a ripple. And Leah? She's probably still there. Smiling. Holding wine glasses. Rebuilding a new truth out of the ashes of the last one. I imagine her telling people I abandoned her. That I had a breakdown. That she tried to help, but I changed. It would be easy for her. She's had practice. People like her, they don't run out of rope. They just cut the ends off and hand it to the next person. I've replayed every moment of our relationship. Not the big lies, those are obvious now. It's the small ones that haunt me. The phrases that never quite matched. The polished stories that always sounded a little too rehearsed. The way she turned questions into character attacks. How she made silence feel like consent, and doubt feel like betrayal. I still wonder what she wanted from me in the end. Was I just another chapter in a pattern? Another man to burn through and erase? Or was there something worse waiting? Something I walked away from just in time? I'll never know. And I've accepted that. But if you're reading this, and something about your partner feels wrong, feels performed, feels like it bends the world around you, listen to that feeling. Don't wait for it to show up in a headline or a closed casket. Don't let their charm become your mask. Document everything. Back up your sanity. And if they ever say, "What man," like the world rewrites itself around their smile. Run. Before you're next.